everyone has joined. So today we are gonna have a webinar on humanitarian logistics, and we will try and analyze the COVID-19 situation and response with the relation to humanitarian logistics. So before going forward, I would like to introduce myself. So basically, currently I'm working at Larsen and Toubro in the construction business. So in the construction business, I'm part of a smart world and communication business unit. So basically, we are in the business of making smart cities. So we are developing smart city infrastructure across the country in different projects. So before joining Larsen & Toubro, I did my MBA from IIM Raipur, and I was part of the batch 2017-19. Prior to that, I've worked for TCS for 2 years, and I was in uh, front-end web development. And before that, I've completed my mechanical engineering from ITM University as part of batch 2011-15, and it's now called North Cap University. So here comes our topic, humanitarian logistics in a nutshell. So before I talk about humanitarian logistics, it is very imperative that I talk about operations. So operations and logistics, like logistics is part of operations, and how they're connected, I will tell you in a while. So first of all, I understand that all of you are not from mechanical background or from even management background right now. So let me explain to you what operations is. So it is everything you can see in the screen right now. It is a combination of resource management, the strategy you are taking for your project management, the planning part, what will be your inputs, outputs, how will you plan, and how you'll plan your human resource, how will you plan your capital expenditure, everything. The overall project overseeing, the cost regulation, the cost minimization, or whatever cost strategies you are implying, that's part of operations as well. How you are bringing your project within the control specifications or within the control limits, that's part of operations. What are your project requirements? What are the requirements you need to adhere to? That's part of operations as well. Input, output, what will be your inputs? What will be your outputs? How will you regulate the inputs and outputs? So all of these together forms the operations, and it's called operations management. So if we go ahead, I would like to start with few questions to all of you. So we all have been hearing in news that airline, hospitality, and tourism industries are the hardest hit in the current scenario of COVID-19 amid the lockdown. Further going, that oil prices have been dropped to jaw-dropping lows. That we have seen that in the recent past in the USA, some oil futures were like trading at negative. Going one step forward, we have seen that online delivery agents have suspended orders like Amazon, Flipkart, Grofers, Big Basket. They are not able to cater to their orders. So may I ask why? Now, uh, before before you people say that okay, like there's a lockdown, these services are affected, but I would like to go some step forward. That there's something common to all of these three. And do you know what's common to all of them? The part common is that the supply chain has been disrupted. So what do I mean by that? In the case of airline and hospitality industries, they have their product ready. They have their product ready, the services are ready, but the consumers are not there. So a crucial part of the supply chain is disrupted. In the case of oil prices dipping to low, the problem is that the supply and demand are not matching. The demand is like as usual. The oil is extracted at the same rate, while the consumers don't are not there. The consumers are asking for very low volumes of product, and that mismatch in supply and demand have caused this shift in oil prices. In the third case, online delivery agents have suspended orders. Why? In this case, the consumers are there. The consumers are waiting for their orders. The consumers are making new orders, but still, the delivery agents could not deliver because the complete logistics part and the supply part, it is disrupted. They don't have the logistics to ship the products to the consumers. They don't have the logistics to get the raw materials. They don't have the logistics to get the product from the manufacturers. That's why it's being disrupted. So we can see that how important logistics is, and logistics is part of supply chain. In case a single component, a single part in the complete supply chain circle is disrupted, the entire supply chain just breaks apart. It's no longer able to function as normal. So moving ahead, now we are in a situation where we could talk about logistics. Since we have talked about operations and supply chain, now logistics is nothing but you could have guessed by now that it's just the efficient flow and storage of products from point A to point B. And when you're planning the operations and by employing a strategy that you're trying to optimize all the aspects of the production, it's operational planning. And when this logistics and operational planning is discussed with the purpose of elevating the suffering of vulnerable people, or providing support to people who are in a situation of crisis, it's called humanitarian logistics. So basically, humanitarian logistics is nothing but, in example, in times of some earthquake or some flash floods or current situation of corona crisis. So when you're trying to optimize logistics, or when you're trying to uh, handle logistics in such a situation, it is called nothing but humanitarian logistics, because it's a time of crisis and you're trying to look after your logistics. So let me go just a little bit more in the types of disaster and levels of logistic effort. So do you know why logistics is very important? It is because in times of any disaster, it is the logistics part that takes up 80% of the total relief effort. 80% cost of total relief effort is a major chunk, and it could make or break any relief operation when such costs are involved. So basically, if you look at the below given table, we could see that based on the nature of disaster categories, the relevance of the logistic effort changes. When the calamity is natural and has a sudden onset, the relevance of the logistic effort is um, very high. So we are again looking at in this case plague, it had a slow onset. We have been witnessing corona crisis gradually becoming severe and severe since January. So it gave us some time to plan a relief operations and logistics. So it is still relevant, but it gave us some time to prepare for it. So if we talk about the stages in any emergency supply chain, so we could talk about the emergency supply chain in 4 stages. The first is the mitigation stage. It is the stage when you are trying to develop mechanisms to minimize any social impact and vulnerability of the disaster. The second stage is the preparation stage. In the preparation stage, we try to put the strategies in place that in case that the disaster do strike, we are able to have a successful operational response. The response stage is just after the disaster strikes. It includes the various operations that are instantly implemented. So once the disaster strikes, so all the coordination and the response, whatever the activities are done in collaboration, the response refers to them. So during the response stage, the important thing is that our focus is on preserving lives. So basically, to preserve life, you are looking at to save time instead of cost. So in the response stage, the cost is not the factor, but the time is. While when we go into the next stage, reconstruction. So reconstruction is little after the response stage when the situation is slightly in control, and at that time you're looking at the long-term in the long time elevating the suffering of the vulnerable. So you are looking to save cost. Slightly you're moving from time focus to cost focus, and you're trying to minimize the cost so that you could cater to all the people with the given budget. So basically, any humanitarian logistics, so there are many people involved, many people or many players involved. So in a simple example, I could tell that a government is a major central player in any such effort, because it's the government which gives all the instructions how to carry out the efforts, who could be involved, what to deliver, what not to deliver, which industries would work, what will be the channels of transport which will be operational. So government is a central element in all such efforts. Other players which are involved is obviously logistic companies. Other than logistic companies, it is military, because sometimes military has to come to aid the effort. There could be health agencies. In our case, particularly health agencies are of great importance because they are the guiding agencies that in such a crisis, what steps needs to be taken, what precautions needs to be taken. They are the ones, and they are also guiding that uh, what pharmaceutical items or what medical services are required, what needs to be supported, what needs to be delivered where. So they are also coordinating in all those efforts. And further, NGOs could be involved providing the services. There could be donor companies. So all these together work in a collaborative manner, and we are able to get a successful uh, humanitarian logistics response. So now talking about the challenges associated with the global crisis. So when we are looking from a global perspective, when we're looking at the global perspective, there are three major challenges which are involved. They are primarily manufacturing challenge, procurement challenge, and distribution challenge in the logistics. So first of all, what's the manufacturing challenge? So basically, if we talk about the last few decades, manufacturing has changed quite a lot. So basically, today manufacturing is a far complex process. It's not that a product is produced at a single place. Instead, any product which is produced, like any complex machinery or anything which is produced, it is made from subcomponents which are assembled to make the single final product. And these subcomponents are sourced from around the world across the globe. And what's further, these subcomponents are further made from different products, which could further be coming up from around the world. And this complete mesh has made the entire manufacturing process so complex. And in such a scenario, where in the current scenario of lockdown, every country has implied some lockdowns, and in such a scenario, manufacturing has taken a major hit. The next thing is the procurement. We know that the world is a globally integrated world. So basically, we have been trying to drive towards efficiency, and what we have done is that in a bid to lower the cost. So basically, we're focusing. We have made our focus towards some particular geographies, and we are trying to get the raw materials or some technologies from there. Basically, in our case example, China. China is a major source of many raw materials and even finished products. For Taiwan, Taiwan has been our source for like high technology items for chipsets. Vietnam and other low-cost economies are delivering other products. So such geography-based focus has resulted in that in case of any such lockdowns or any such break in the supply chain, since we are uh, dependent on particular geographies, particular economies, the entire thing is like off balance. The third part is the distribution part. So distribution is like the last leg of logistics when you're just trying to reach the masses. So distribution is like labor intensive process. So you might be requiring labor for warehouse staffing. You might be requiring people to reach door to door. So like in the current scenario of coronavirus, you need to plan your distribution very intelligently because you need to have a responsive allocation across channels, like what channels you will use to get to the masses, how you will direct your distribution efforts. So that's another challenge. So here is an example given of it's a Boeing jet assembly facility. So you could see that different parts of the Boeing jet are sourced, or like these subcomponents are assembled at a single facility, but these subcomponents are like sourced from around the world. Some subcomponents are made in South Korea, some are made in France, some are made in Australia, like Canada. So you could see that around the world, and such dependence is causing the current crisis, that amid lockdown in various parts of the world, such um, due to such dependency, the entire manufacturing process, as we just discussed, is halted. So now we just discussed the challenges faced by the global supply chain. Let's talk about the impacts. So what are the impacts of this global supply chain? So the interlinked and global nature of supply chain has obviously made them vulnerable to the uh, a range of risks. What are the risks we are talking about? So we're talking about that supply chain shocks from China and Europe. What does that mean? So China is like the factory for the world. And when the factory for the world is not functioning properly, you're definitely going to face supply shocks. And Europe has been delivering high quality, high-end technology products to the world. And corona situation has been particularly worse in Europe. And we know that all the like whatever dependencies we had on Europe, due to that, we are severely constrained. There have been recession-like conditions in North America and Europe. So apart from producers themselves, North America and Europe are major consumers around the world. And with recession-like conditions in there, the whole world economy is like on the verge of collapsing. We have seen that the delayed orders have created a huge backlog, and that backlog has resulted in a bottleneck. So it's very imperative that that backlog needs to be cleared. So we know that um, some of the backlogs are created at ports, some of the backlog are created at airport, like the containers are lying there for being quarantined. So all those backlogs are creating uh, huge difficulties. So now next is that irregular demand and irrational demand. So there are very low demand for some commodities like oil, while there are irrational demand for others. So for example, we have seen the demand for toilet paper in US and Canada and Europe. So such demand, such erratic demands imbalances the entire supply chain and could throw them out of order. And the last part is low manufacturer confidence in wake of corona crisis. So what is happening that we talked that North America and Europe, their recession-like conditions, such recession-like conditions are shaking the confidence of the manufacturers that they're not sure or certain that should they run their manufacturing or production facilities at full capacity or should they wait. So the conditions are not clear to anyone. So now from the world or global logistics, from the global logistics supply chain, we could move to Indian logistic industry. So the Indian logistic industry is providing employment close to 40 million people, and it is contributing over 200 billion to the economy in the GDP. So logistics has always been considered to be a lifeline. It connects markets, suppliers, and consumers across the country. But the problem with the Indian logistic industry is that it is still highly fragmented and largely unorganized. We are still using the traditional approaches of trucking, loading, and material handling. So what we need to do in such a situation that in India particularly that we know that we are still constrained by traditional approaches, what we need to do right now? So first of all, we need to evaluate existing inventory at hand. We should be very clear that what inventories we hold so that optimal utilization of these inventories could be planned. The next thing is that we need to create logistics and supply chain transparency. It should be very clear and transparent to us that what channels we could use, how many warehouses do we have, what are the hubs that needs to be filled. So that kind of supply chain transparency is required for planning optimal response. And thirdly, we should have very realistic estimate of the end consumer demand. That what does the end consumer want? Is it realistic? Would we be able to meet it in the near future? What will be the time required? So all those things we should have a very realistic estimate of them. So if I talk about a small study conducted by McKinsey & Company, so whatever the retail chain challenges have been faced by whatever the challenges have been faced by the retail industry, so McKinsey & Company suggested some of the things that could be uh, performed or practiced to mitigate those challenges. So I will just highlight some of those for you. So basically what we need to do, we need to reduce the product variety in this crisis. The SKUs or stock keeping units could be minimized or the differences in products could be minimized for greater quantities so that at least essential items could reach to maximum people. In merchandising, what could we do? In merchandising, we could revise our buy plans and we could reallocate our staff towards the high demand categories, so that, like, what we are trying to do, we are trying to focus on the essential items, and we are trying to, like, we are trying to move away from non-essentials for time being, so that essentials like food, medicines, or any other products could reach the needy. In the distribution part, which is highly, like, workforce intensive, what we are trying to do, in the wake that we don't have sufficient manpower, we are trying to retrain employees and redeploy them. So we are trying to cross-train employees as well. But at the same time, it is very required that they maintain good workplace hygiene, so that the people who are there don't get infected themselves. In the logistics part, obviously we are allocating more transport capacity to high demand items. Even the suppliers are directly delivering to stores. So basically, what we are trying to do, we have created an identified hub. So we are trying to deliver maximum items to the hub, and we are trying to use a hub and spoke system. So what we are trying to do, the hubs are being supplied with all the essential items, and from those hubs, they are delivering to the nearby places where it is required. So other than that, what steps could be taken to support the logistic operations? So basically, immediate focus is on the end-to-end visibility, as we just talked, so that we could make the process more agile, and the flexibility is the focus, so that in a day-to-day changing scenario, we could alter the process in the shortest possible time. Focus on delivering essential goods, absolutely. All non-essentials are being held. The top priority is like food items, medicines, other pharmaceutical products. So next thing is working in collaboration with other logistics service provider. So what does this mean? Basically, in any geography, multiple logistic partners operate, and sometimes, at least in a normal scenario, many of them work in competition. But what happens when we are talking about a humanitarian logistic effort? Instead of being competitors, they try to collaborate. And by working in collaborations, they could achieve more efficiencies in their logistics effort. Next part is developing mitigation approaches. So what we are trying to do by mitigation approach, we are looking at alternate channels of transportation. For example, if it is not possible to reach to some place by road, we are trying to look at airways. If, for example, if we know the traditional means of transport has been waterways, but we know that the time required to transport something essential from waterways is like very high time is required. So we are looking at airfare, by airways, and we're trying to consolidate as consignments. By consolidating consignments, again, we could achieve efficiency in storage. And the lastly, but not the least, it is very required that we recognize logistics as an essential service. So, like we have recognized that people involved in the pharma industry, they're essential. So it is required that we see logistics as essential service, because it keeps the entire supply chain up and running. So the last thing that I want to talk from the logistics and supply chain perspective is that we need a new supply chain model. So we have seen that in a different, whatever the challenges we faced and what are the impacts of that on the supply chain. So we have seen that to mitigate all those, the one thing that's required is visibility, agility, flexibility in the process. We want the entire supply chain to be resilient, so that in different situations, the same supply chain could function differently. So what we're trying to do, so we're trying to, what we're trying to suggest, basically, we're trying to suggest that the normal supply chains could be transformed into digital supply networks, or DSN. So basically what used to happen earlier in any organization, there were functional silos. So in any organization, different departments used to order differently. So those departments were not in coordination while placing the orders. But now what's happening with the use of technology? With the use of technology like IoT, cloud computing, 5G, AI, robotics, with these disruptions, the companies have, like organizations have learned that they need to transform into digital supply networks where every department will know that what other department is ordering or placing an order, who are their sources of procurement, so that the orders could be combined, a better value a better value could be realized, the orders could be processed or procured at a lower cost. So all these things could be very well done by transforming a linear supply chain into a digital supply network. So from a risk management perspective, what we are trying to do, we are trying to build a resilient supply chain capable of quickly recovering from any supply chain disruption that might occur. So here we can see that what's happening. Uh, the left side, we could see a traditional supply chain where a plan was developed, and then it was pushed to a source. Source like our sourcing agents. Then they used to push it to manufacturers. Then from manufacturers to delivery, and then it used to come to us. That was part of cognitive planning. In digital supply networks, what's happening? The different departments within the same organization are connected with technology. So basically, everyone knows what others require, what orders are being placed, from where they are being procured or being sourced, at what time they will arrive. So with this collaborated and connected manner, we could achieve greater efficiencies in the whole supply chain and logistics part. So with that, I would like to say that I have tried to uh, give you some information about the logistics, the operation, supply chain. And now if you have any questions, just push them in the chat box. So lastly, I would like to share my mantra with you all. So basically now since I'm working in industry and previously I worked with, I had my experiences with Tata as well as now I'm working in Larsen & Toubro. So across my journey, I have learned some things that I would like to share with you, and I hope that they might be of value to you all. So the first part or the first point I would like to share with you is that always challenge yourselves. So you have to realize that there's no pain, no gain is actually a mantra that you need to imply in your life. Because why always challenge yourself? Because once you are in your comfort zone, there is no growth. If you need to grow, you need to put yourself to difficult situations, face difficult tasks, and then only you could experience some real growth. What happens? Success is a ladder. Continuing from the first point, you need to realize that sometimes just after college, we have unrealistic expectations. We just want to get the best package, the best job, the best role, but that doesn't happen that way. You have to build your way into the industry. You have to learn through things. And that's why it said success is a ladder and you have to climb it. Thirdly, be ready to improvise whenever needed. What does that mean? Sometimes the things don't turn out as you plan them. And when such plannings fail, always have a plan B and plan C ready. Always be ready to improvise that if the things don't go as per your plan, what will be your steps? It always helps. The next thing is very important. Always keep upskilling yourself. So in by saying that always keep upskilling yourself, why is it relevant? I always thought I would give a personal reference that I always thought that after my post graduation, like I could relax in industry, I would have a role and I would keep continue doing it. But believe me, guys and girls, it is imperative that you always try and keep learning new things because otherwise you will be outdated. The world is constantly changing, the industry is constantly changing, the tools used are constantly evolving, and you need to upskill yourself to be relevant. So it should start as a practice from your graduation of at wherever you are, whatever level you are, it should start from there and you have to incorporate it. Grab all opportunities to learn and participate. It is very essential that at this stage, instead of shying away from opportunities, you should make all efforts to grab them. What happens that you will be soon you will be coming like people who are already there in the final year. You will be ready with your resumes and trying to get the best roles and best jobs for yourself. And in these times, it matters what is there on your resume. I've seen people who are like done with 4 years of their graduation, and they still feel that they have nothing to show for their accomplishments. So opportunities don't only uh, make themselves presence on their resume, but it's also a learning curve. They provide you chances to learn new things, chances to take initiatives. So always grab these opportunities. Next part is again take initiatives. Sometimes those opportunities don't come by their own. Sometimes you have to take initiative. Always ask questions whenever there's a chance. The next thing is that sometimes you're not expected, or sometimes most of the times you're not expected to know everything. For example, while I was recruited in TCS, so I was a mechanical graduate. So why did TCS recruit me? They didn't recruit me because I had the coding skills. They didn't expected me to know that. What they were expecting from me? They were expecting from me a good aptitude, a curious mind, willingness to learn new things. So basically, we are often fearful that we don't know everything. How should we proceed? But the actual thing is that sometimes the people on the other side of the table, they do not expect you as such. They are just willing to see a confident person who is willing to take the chances, who is eager to learn. So that's sometimes much more valuable. And lastly, making mistakes is always a part of the game. Without making mistakes, it is very difficult to learn. Like every mistake should bring a new learning for you. Again, I would like to relate these things from my own example. So basically, my current organization, Larsen and Toubro, in this organization, there's a culture that mistakes are not seen from a negative light. What is seen is that from those mistakes, what is the learning for you, and what is the learning for organization. It is always encouraged that you whatever learnings you had, whatever mistakes you had, whatever the learnings you gained, you share those learnings with everyone, so that those mistakes, or whatever the losses those mistakes brought you, they could be made into learnings for everyone. So these are small points for you all, small takers. And further, I want to wish you all best of luck. And in case of any doubts, do reach out to me. Thank you.